it's inhumane, it's freaking barbaric, and it's police brutality at its finest.
Tonight, Prince Albert police are investigated as a man clings to life.
The present government had limited harm reduction resources.
Plus, opioid deaths are devastating the Kainai Nation.
Had a number of chiefs already reach out just with anxiety about direct delivery.
And federal workers walk off the job, including Indigenous Services Canada. Good evening, Tansei Anin. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. Saskatchewan's Serious Incident Response Unit is investigating after Prince Albert police beat and tased a man during a traffic stop. Now, a warning to our viewers, the video is quite distressing.
Get out of the car! Get on there! Get out! You're gonna get tased! Get out now! This is your last warning. You're gonna get tased! Hands up! You're gonna get tased!
The video posted to Facebook was provided to APTN News. It shows officers using force and tasering 40-year-old Bowden Umferville, who was a passenger during a suspected stolen car stop on April the 1st, 2023. Details from a CERT press release so far include the recovery of a loaded firearm at the scene and that the vehicle crashed into a police car. The car's registered owner was driving and said they did not report the car stolen. Umferville was wanted on an outstanding bench warrant, and now he is in a vegetative state at a Saskatoon hospital. His friend Chase Sinclair says the excessive force may cost Umferville his life as his family prepares to remove him from life support later this week.
It was a vicious attack, and it was stemmed from who he was, and I think that, and I guess it's too bold to say exactly what I'm trying to say, but I think that you know where I'm going with this, is that people like him, people like us, people like who they just hate. It's either stick them in behind walls or get rid of them is where I'm going with this. And that's exactly what this was. I don't think that there's any other thing to explain it. It's inhumane. It's freaking barbaric. And it's police brutality at its finest.
Prince Albert police declined an interview. The Saskatchewan Serious Incident Response Team is investigating, and the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations will hold a press conference this Friday regarding the incident. The mother of an Indigenous girl is speaking out about an incident that took place earlier this month. She claims her daughter was injured by RCMP after her arrest. As Sarah Connors tells us, the mother claims her search for answers is being met with resistance. And again, a warning, there are graphic images in this story.
A dislocated kneecap and a torn ACL are just some of the injuries a mother claims her daughter sustained after an incident with the White Horse RCMP. APTN is not identifying the girl because she is a minor. Now her mother, Brianne Gagnon, wants answers on what happened.
It's heartbreaking. As a parent, you put trust in public servant, and I feel like it's failed.
That incident took place in an alleyway off this street where Gagnon's daughters and her friends were underage drinking. RCMP officers showed up and Gagnon's daughter's friends fled the scene, leaving her there. RCMP officers attempted to put Gagnon in the back of a cruiser and take her to a holding cell where she could sober up. Though her daughter doesn't recall what happened because she was intoxicated, Gagnon says RCMP officers told her her daughter was resisting arrest and sustained her injuries in the process. But Gagnon has questions.
Did my daughter have a weapon? No. Did my daughter assault an officer? No. Was there a standoff? No. Okay, well, so the line should have been pretty low for aggression. And he said they use whatever force necessary to detain somebody.
Gagnon's daughter was never charged. She says her daughter was hospitalized the night of the incident, but her family wasn't informed until she was discharged 12 hours later. She says the RCMP have been dismissive about the incident, even calling it an accident.
And I said, this is not an accident. Regardless of the situation and what she endured with her injuries, that was an accident. To get your knee dislocated.
Gagnon says officers also told her they had no footage of what happened from a local business.
When we reached out to the cafe, they said that wasn't true.
Yukon RCMP says they're taking the matter seriously and it's too premature to comment at this time. Gagnon is no longer speaking to the RCMP about the incident because she feels like she's not getting anywhere with them. She's now working on getting video footage. She's also hoping for acknowledgement and an apology from the RCMP to her daughter. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
And joining us now for more context on police interactions with Indigenous people is Edmonton-based lawyer Tom Engel. Tom, thank you for joining us here on APTN National News. 69 people are said to have died in Canada during 2022 during police use of force interactions, the highest amount in the past 2 decades. Why does there seem to be an increase of police use of force incidents in the country?
Well, it's a complex issue, and I think that the only way you could draw any conclusions is to review each case on its own and see what the circumstances were, see whether there are any common circumstances and whether that is evidencing a trend. So I don't think you can actually draw any conclusions just by the sheer number.
And Tom, some jurisdictions are looking at abolishing the RCMP altogether. In your opinion, would that help?
Well, that too is a complex question. I think that it depends what you replace the RCMP with. So if you replace them with a police service that is not doing their job right, behaves unethically, uses excessive force, it's going to be no improvement. There are a lot of problems with the RCMP, especially in relation to how they're staffed. I think they're understaffed in a lot of detachments, and there are a lot of problems in terms of their accountability for misconduct. When misconduct occurs, it's a very bad system that the federal government needs to fix, and they haven't done it for years and years.
And last one for you here, Tom. What's the recourse for people who are injured during interactions where force is involved?
Well, if the issue, okay, so you're talking about excessive force, where the person believes it's excessive force.
Yes.
You make a criminal complaint about the force used by the police officer. You make a police act complaint, or make a complaint under whatever legislation is in the province or territory that it happened in, or you make a complaint under the RCMP Act. And you can also sue. Now, people have to bear in mind that there are deadlines for making complaints. Most often it's 1 year or less, and you have 2 years to sue. You can ask for, if it's a fatality, you can ask if the family wants something done about it, then you can ask the government to conduct a fatality inquiry so that there's some transparency. Those are the things that can be done.
Okay, Tom, we'll have to leave it there, but we certainly appreciate you coming on our show and providing us with a little bit of insight into some of this. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, we have to step aside a moment. Stay with us. Plenty more news is still ahead. Welcome back to APTN National News. The Kainai Nation in southern Alberta suffered through a massive fentanyl drug problem a decade ago. Harm reduction methods such as safe injection sites helped control the issue, but now, once again, opioid deaths are spiraling out of control. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
Canada's largest land reserve is the Kainai Blood Tribe, Blackfoot people who live in the far south of Alberta. And the nightmare they lived through 10 years ago has returned. Dozens of young people are dying from opioid overdoses, and it's not stopping. Dr. Esther Tailfeathers is a physician at the health center. She says the increase in drug use is directly related to harm reduction closures like safe injection sites.
The present government had limited harm reduction resources, and they closed the safe consumption site in Lethbridge. We know that had a direct impact now because most of the people that are dying from overdose are either found in a park, in a basement, in somebody else's house, a back alley, so they were all using alone and unsafely.
Local funeral home websites show the numbers of people dying young is skyrocketing. Tailfeathers says the numbers are chilling.
I counted 68%. That was 42 out of 62 deaths were drug overdose related, drug related, or suicide since December 25th to March 25th.
And there is a new drug that is being mixed with fentanyl and other drugs, a horse tranquilizer that is deadly.
We now have a drug on our hands which we do not have an antidote for, which is mixed in with fentanyl. So
Is that becoming more prominent?
Xylazine will be a problem across the province, and people are dying within 10 minutes of taking it.
In 2020, then Premier Jason Kenney and the UCP announced the funding of 75 recovery beds for the Kainai people. Tailfeathers says the beds never came through.
No, it hasn't transpired. There's no accountability to the people of Kainai who need those beds. And whether that's a provincial accountability or whether it's a tribal accountability, it still means that those beds should be open so people can access treatment.
Chief and Council declared a state of emergency, and they are trying to stem the drug epidemic by creating a drug task force and imposing a curfew. Kainai Chief Roy Fox says they are also trying other methods.
We will immediately provide some of our own source revenues provisionally to the police task force and engage with other funding sources in acquiring more funding. Some of the abandoned homes situated primarily in the town sites are being used for illegal drug purposes, and we will again utilize our own source revenues in renovating these houses so deserving homeless families can have adequate houses to live in.
Derek Fox is the CEO of the Blood Tribe Department of Health. He says the 75-bed treatment center might be ready next year.
We're really looking at within the next short period, as far as potentially in June, to have shovels in the ground. And again, construction, we're pushing hard, so we're hoping that by next fall, potentially, that we're completed the construction. So shortly thereafter, hopefully operations begin.
Alberta Minister of Health and Addictions Office released a statement that reads in part, "A request for proposals for construction of the site is currently open, and then the evaluation of those bids will move forward in the coming days. Once the successful proponent is chosen, the project can move forward to completion of design and the beginning of construction in late summer." It goes on to say that a 50-bed recovery facility is scheduled to open this summer in Lethbridge. Dr. Tailfeather says the number of people who will die will continue to escalate without strong action.
But I think it impacts all Canadians. It impacts all Albertans. Even though you want to put up a big fence and say that's not my problem, it will be.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Kainai Blood Tribe, Alberta.
And now to BC, where the opioid crisis there is showing no signs of slowing down. The BC coroner has revealed that close to 600 people have lost their lives in that province from January of this year to March. APTN's Steenhouse joins us from the front lines of this war against drugs.
It's been 7 years since BC declared a public health emergency due to toxic drugs. Joining me today is Trey Helton from the Overdose Prevention Society. Trey, has the situation improved at all down here?
No, a lot of my friends are still dying, people I know personally, sometimes 2 a day. Ops is holding memorials, usually on Mondays. Sometimes we have 3 memorials in one day. It's incredibly distressing to try and rush through them. Just to hold space just for a person that died and just take a moment to remember them. Anytime I go on social media, all I see is just an endless list of new people that have passed. So I mean, I can't say that it looks like it's slowing down at all.
Even with all the measures, I mean, BC recently approving up to 2.5 grams of hard drug use in this province with all the safe supply measures, nothing is helping. Is that what you're saying?
I think there's a lot of different solutions that need to be intertwined. There's not one clear solution. There's a lot of different things that could happen that could help people. I mean, housing, affordable housing. This is the most expensive city to live in Canada now. It's incredibly distressing. It's overwhelming to think about trying to find a place that isn't infested with cockroaches or mice, shared bathroom accommodations that you can afford. There's a lot of people who have mental health problems that should probably be institutionalized. Not everyone, but some. There's a lot of people that aren't ready to stop using drugs that could benefit from safe supply from drugs that they would actively seek, like fentanyl or crystal meth or cocaine, instead of being poisoned by toxic drugs that are being put on the street. And then there's the people that want recovery that are finding very high barriers to access healthcare services. So there's a lot of things just that I see from a ground level that could be done that aren't being done. So there's a lot of different solutions. There's not one clear solution to it.
Trey, today we honor the lives of 11,000 people that we've lost in this province and up to 6 a day. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Tina.
Back to you in studio.
6 million litres of water exceeding sediment guidelines has been released into Alberta's Athabasca River by the energy company Suncor. Suncor owns Petro-Canada. The company says the spill contained more than double the allowed limit of sediments. The Alberta Energy Regulator is investigating the spill, but says it did not come from a tailings pond. Athabasca Chippewa First Nation said in a press release that the contamination of their environment and the AER's neglect to inform affected communities in the Northwest Territories who share the watershed, quote, highlight the continued failure of the AER to prevent, properly communicate, or proactively regulate environmental catastrophes in the oil sands. Suncor Energy sent a statement that says, in part, that surface water was released into the Athabasca River due to spring runoff, and during this time of year, sediment concentrations often are increased. Suncor takes this very seriously and is investigating the increase to see if there are improvements that could be made. A strike by tens of thousands of federal public service workers across Canada began today. It could affect everything from renewing your passport to when you get a tax refund, but it will also affect services that Indigenous people access regularly. A couple of hundred people demonstrated in front of this federal building in downtown Ottawa this morning, and while they remain on the picket line, these services are affected. Applying for or renewing a status card, submitting a request under Jordan's Principle, accessing non-insured health benefits, or receiving treaty annuities. On the other hand, these services will be unaffected. First Nations Child and Family Welfare Services, support for Indigenous businesses, the Hope for Wellness Helpline, and various programs like housing, water, and education will continue to be funded. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Haidu had this to say.
I've had a number of chiefs already reach out just with anxiety about direct delivery. The department has an operational plan, though, to continue to provide services, and frontline services won't be affected. Nonetheless, I'll be watching and listening extremely carefully.
All right, we have to pause our news one more time here. When we come back, we'll have highlights from today's In Focus. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. From the Kainai Nation in British Columbia, Clarence Jones sent in this picture of the Gitsigukla Mountain as seen just last night as the sun was beginning to set. Thanks, Clarence. That's a great shot there. And thanks to everyone who sends in these great photos. If you have a photo you would like to share, you can email that picture to share@aptn.ca. All right, now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 1 degree in St. John's and 12 in Halifax, 4 degrees in Cartwright and 3 in Kuujjuaq, 7 degrees in Val-d'Or and 11 in Montreal. Toronto's looking at 12 degrees and Winter's looking at clear and 27, 6 degrees in Timmins and 3 in Big Trout Lake, -3 in Clear and Churchill and 5 degrees in Norway House, 5 in Barons River and 2 in snow in Winnipeg, -3 in snow in Swift Current and 0 degrees in Saskatoon, 3 degrees in Buffalo Narrows and 6 in Uranium City. As we make our way west, 5 degrees in Fort Chipewyan and 10 in Peace River, 5 in Edmonton and 6 in snow in Calgary, 10 degrees in Vancouver and 13 in Bella Coola, 8 degrees in Sandspit and 8 in Fort Nelson, 6 in Beaver Creek and 7 in Clear in Dawson, -2 in Norman Wells and 5 in Clear in Yellowknife, -5 in Fort McPherson and -2 in Colville Lake, -7 in Cambridge Bay and -7 in Chesterfield. Iqaluit is looking at -10 and Iqaluit is looking at -3. Racism in the healthcare system is a recurring topic here on APTN, and it was at the forefront of our In Focus episode this week. Here's a quick look at the show. What evidence revealed that racism in the Alberta healthcare system exists?
Well, for that first question around feeling cold or warm towards Indigenous people, we had about 8% of responding physicians actually indicate that they felt cold towards Indigenous people. The second question about preferring white people or Indigenous people, 25%, so that's a quarter of all the practicing physicians in the province who responded to that question, actually indicated that they prefer white people.
So somebody coming in with a headache, with a urine infection or a sick baby, you don't need to worry anything other than being ill and seeking care. You don't need to worry about somebody treating you disrespectfully or dismissing anything that you say. And that really, those racial dismissals are incredibly powerful and they can kill.
Can you just remind our viewers who Joyce is and what happened to her?
She was labeled belligerent and difficult by the people who were tasked with her care. She was sedated, she was restrained and in extreme pain, and in her dying moments was able to reach for her phone, hit the live button on Facebook, and capture the moment when her caregivers were actually heard hurling racial slurs towards her, calling her effing stupid, saying that her kind is only good for sex. Really appalling things that in no circumstance would have been pertinent to her care or just appropriate in that moment.
All right, that's all we have for you on this edition of APTN National News. If you happen to miss today's In Focus or any of our stories from tonight's show, you can visit aptnnews.ca. For all of us here, thank you so much for joining us. Miigwech Kinanaskamatin. Have a great night.